Well, joining me now to give his view of the scheme is Labour's Environment spokesperson Shane Jones. He's familiar with resources issues as a former chair of the Treaty of Waitangi Fisheries Commission. Kia ora, Shane, thanks for coming in.
Kia ora.
National says this is going to halve the cost of power and petrol prices over the scheme you guys had. So what's wrong with it?
Now, the reality is that the household package which the Labour government was preparing to introduce was cut out once we lost the election. And secondly, our scheme was not designed to impose the burden of meeting Kyoto obligations onto the taxpayer. We actually wanted the emitters themselves to take more responsibility for meeting the financial costs which the nation's going to have to absorb through changing the way in which they create goods and services. That's been abandoned, and taxpayers are up to the tune of $150 billion are going to pay for this scheme.
Putting it very, very simply, this scheme looks quite tidy and quite good in the context of New Zealand, apart from the cost. Once we get out to the wider world, to Copenhagen, to the Kyoto Protocol and things like that, it starts looking a little less good, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the deal in the eyes of a host of international observers and negotiators is not only a sellout, but it's a major withdrawal from the position that existed last year. But the reality is, this is the Nationals' approach. They do believe that the taxpayers should subsidise emitters until such time emitters, and it could take up to 100 years, change the way in which they create goods and services. That's not the approach we took. We believe that if you are an emitter, you need to change the way in which you're creating goods and services and reduce your carbon footprint.
Phil Goff is calling the deal with Māori, or the way it's being dealt with the Māori Party politicking, pork barrel politicking. What do you make of that, and why is it being labelled that?
Most of the Māori people I've spoken to today regard it as a pork bone. It's a tiny, trivial concession given to a narrow, privileged range of people. Not all of Māori landowners are going to have this opportunity, and why I'm particularly opposed to it is that once we enter into full and final settlements, then the tribes have to get on with life. They should not come back with this victimhood grievance mentality, wanting to top up their settlements every time there's a chance. And the Māori Party have actually sold out Māori taxpayers, Māori voters, and delivered a massive subsidy from the taxpayer to less than 1% of New Zealand's population.
Dr. Smith is saying this is in some way meeting a treaty obligation. Is it really?
The Labour government looked at this issue, and we found, after a QC did exhaustive analysis, we found no basis for reopening and topping up the treaty settlements. We formed the view that the settlements we entered into good faith. We found no evidence that Doug Graham lied to any of the tribes. He's a very honourable man. So this notion that somehow Doug Graham lied in the 1990s to the Treaty of Waitangi claimants is absolute rubbish. The Māori Party have used it as an opportunity to advance their agenda, but they'll find that what's good for one tribe is bad for Maori, and it's going to be fatal for them.
Has this taken, in an international sense, our stance, our position on climate change any further forward, or is it, in your opinion, has it taken it backwards?
I think we'll find that it's worsened our position. But
why?
Well, not only have we passed the obligation onto taxpayers to meet the burden, we've actually not incentivised the largest emitters in New Zealand to change the way in which goods and services are created. At the end of the day, New Zealand has an international profile. We are emitting to a given level, and unless businesses and firms move towards reducing those emitters, you and I are going to have to pay for them, and we're going to be doing it in the way in which in Muldoon's day, for example, taxpayers subsidised farmers back there to grow wool that no one wanted.
The insulation of the 8,000 homes that was negotiated by the Māori Party, that has to be a positive thing, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, let's not deprecate the importance of insulating homes. But the Business Council said there are 1 million homes, 1 million people, rather, who need their homes insulated. So 8,000... If that's the cost of Māori Party acquiescence, then the sooner we see them off the face of New Zealand politics, the better. You
said before that Māori is seeing this as a pork bone. Broadly speaking, is that the consensus, that this isn't as significant as being made out today?
Well, I think it's pork bone politics in the sense this is not going to benefit all Māori landowners. This is not going to benefit all the tribes. This is going to predominantly benefit one tribe in the South Island, Ngāi Tahu. Now, that's life. They've seen an opportunity, and they've been able to practice a kind of dog-in-the-manger sort of politics with the Māori Party to gain this concession, but it does not advance Māoridom in general in terms of them meeting the costs of the transition we've all got to go through with climate change.
Does the Māori Party have an obligation to spread the net a bit wider than just Ngāi Tahu, or even just Māori? Should they be doing that?
Well, I think that because they're a grievance party, they need grievances to exist incessantly. their touchstone really is this victimhood mentality. And if grievances are settled, then their purposeful being diminishes. So I'm not surprised that they're keeping grievances alive and opening up the old 1996, 1998 settlements.
Finally, just very, very quickly, Hone Harawira, very opposed to this. He's in a fairly tenuous position himself. What does he like to say about today's deal?
Well, Hone Harawira, as I understand, is moving amongst his own people, holding all sorts of hui. He has never been a supporter of this scheme because the scheme imposes enormous obligations on taxpayers and it stops taxpayer dollars being spent in other directions. But this is a matter of principle, and we'll see whether or not the pragmatism of his survival or the principle of his beliefs which holds the highest order of importance.
All right, Shane, thank you very much. Labour's Environment spokesperson, Shane Jones.